this video is basically an overview of the wrap-up essay I'd like you to write, reflecting on the process of working in a group on a beat for what ended up being half of a semester in journalism too. So part of the kind of overall objectives for college in general is to help kind of prepare you for going out and having your professional life and professional career. No matter what aspect of communications or media communications that you end up working in, you're going to end up working in a group of people who are trying to communicate a kind of single goal. If you end up working in kind of news media or any kind of reporting media, then you will kind of be working on a beat similar to this where you're covering the same kind of topic. But even if you're working in PR or, like I worked in corporate video communication, you're going to be working with multiple people where everyone has their roles and you all need to come together to create a single piece. So the idea with this is to think about what you learned, both in terms of the process of writing your articles and working on your articles, and in terms of working in a group and how that worked. What did you learn? What can you do better now than you could when you started? What did you maybe learn about yourself, learn about others? These are the types of questions, interestingly, that you also sometimes get asked in interviews about, like, what is a challenge that you faced at work and what did you learn about yourself and others from it? So these can be good things to reflect upon and to kind of work on your personal growth as well as your growth in terms of the skills of the craft of, in this case, we're working on writing. So I've got an overview here that kind of goes into what those objectives are and, why we're focusing on not just our own individual skills, but how we bring our skills together because, we want to be able to understand our own strengths and weaknesses and then allow other people to help us in areas where we know we struggle, but that they, that's one of their strengths. And then you can then bring your own strengths to the table and say, well, this is an area that I'm really good at. Because together we can all be better than we would be if we just did things on our own. So I would like you to make sure that you include specific examples in your essay of things that, maybe happened or things that you did. What were specific things that you enjoyed? Was there a moment when you were working with other people that you were like, this was great or this was really difficult? But I don't want generalities. I would like to know like specific interactions because that's where we can learn the most from. So your wrap-up essay should be 1 to 2 pages. Again, the final grade for the group work section is going to be an average of your first 2 kind of smaller entries where you are thinking about your kind of that specific issues work. And then this one's going to be a little bit longer. And again, I would like this to be in an essay format. So think about it in terms of a 5-paragraph essay where you've got your beginning, your introduction, where you set out your thesis, your idea. You're going to have at least 3 paragraphs that support this, and then you're going to wrap up with a conclusion. And go ahead and write it in first person. That's absolutely fine. This is what I learned. This is what I did. It doesn't have to be 5 paragraphs exactly. You might end up finding that, it's 6 or 7, but that's the general format where you've got the kind of, a narrative arc of a beginning, middle, and an end, and that the meat in the middle is kind of more substantive than the beginning and the end. So think about starting off with a summary of the experience of working on a beat with a group. Did you feel like it was a constructive experience for your growth as a writer and communicator? So again, I don't want to know if you liked your group or if you liked working in a group. I know a lot of people don't like working in groups, but more, did you find it constructive in terms of your growth? Did you find that even if there are challenges, that can be a constructive experience because you can learn things from them? Or did you feel like the challenges ended up being greater than the kind of good you got from it? In which case, okay, maybe that's not constructive, but realizing that and being able to articulate that, that's constructive. So did you feel like working on a beat helps you develop your skills for your professional career? Why or why not? And this kind of idea about the constructiveness of the experience, how much your skills developed or didn't develop, that should be the thesis of your argument. You should be able to look back and think, did this help me? Did this not help me? So less about your kind of subjective like or dislike of the concept of group work, because I know most of us don't like group work, but more what could I take from this and then apply to a different situation? I've included some prompts here that can help you flesh out the body of your piece. You don't need to answer all of these questions. These are more jumping off points. These are more, if you start thinking about these questions, then hopefully what goes into the body of the piece should become apparent to you. And again, try to think as much as possible in terms of specific examples of things that happened. Now, you can compare and contrast this experience with working on articles of your own. Most of you guys were in Journalism 1 last semester, and last semester we all worked on our own individual pieces of writing. So you can think about that experience and compare how working in a group either was the same or different, or even if you weren't in Journalism 1 last semester, or if that wasn't a useful example for you. You can think about other times that you've worked on pieces, either pieces of reporting or other pieces of, say, research that you've had to do on your own versus having the ability to work with other people in the group. And if you felt like it was much the same, then think about maybe things that you guys could have done as a group differently in order to make it more collaborative. What would have made the experience better that way? So what skills have you developed in telling journalistic stories this semester? And did you use these skills in your group, or did you use these skills more individually? Describe the habits of your group and how you guys worked as a process. How did those habits differ when you started on issue 1 versus when you went to issue 2? I asked you guys to reflect after issue 1. Was that reflection useful? Did you actually make substantive changes to how you operated based on that? And if you did or didn't, were you happy with making changes or not making changes? You could discuss the revision process. Was it mostly on your own? Did one person have kind of major control over the editing? That was a way that some groups split things up. You could consider thinking about how the peer review process worked. Was it constructive? Was it something that you found that you did get feedback from each other, or did people have a look at it but not actually give you the feedback that maybe would have been helpful? What effort did you personally put into drafting, editing, and revising the articles? Did you work on your own from beginning to end? Did you work on yours for the writing and then you edited a different person's article? Or again, was one person in charge of all the editing? So you can tell me about that, and then make sure you comment and talk about how that was useful or wasn't useful. And how did your group draw on your strengths, and allow you to draw on other group members to address areas you needed help with? So again, earlier I was saying, the idea that you can understand your own strengths and weaknesses, and that you can ask for help in areas where you're not as strong. That's a really important skill to learn, so that way you can identify your own areas and you can get help from people, because we all have different strengths and we should be able to use each other's strengths to kind of make the best thing possible. What was helpful in the process of working in a group, and what was missing that you think could have helped more? Was there something within the group that maybe worked particularly well or didn't work particularly well? What do you know now that you didn't know before you started this semester about how your writing works? And what do you know now that you didn't know before the semester about how you work in groups? So again, you're going to be commenting both on the particular aspect of writing an article for the Yellow Jacket, and also the general working in a group aspect. And what can you do now that you couldn't do before? So sometimes you learn things like you're really good at mediating between people, or that maybe you're really good at the editing and revision side of things. You have really good attention to detail. And maybe that wasn't something that you had appreciated about your own working habits until you've worked with other people. So before you conclude, make sure that you include some challenges. Don't only tell me the good things. What was new or challenging about this experience, and how did the challenges push you to develop strategies, either in terms of your writing or working with groups? And did any of your work habits change as a result of these challenges? And overall, what was helpful to you, and what would you change about the experience? So your concluding paragraph should be sure to re-emphasize your thesis that you came up with at the beginning, and remembering that the thesis is focusing on the constructiveness or not constructiveness of the experience, both in terms of your writing skills and in terms of your interpersonal group skills. And make sure you point to one or two significant and specific examples that you've picked up on above based on maybe either these jumping off points or upon something that you thought of that I haven't mentioned here. But make sure that, you kind of go back to those significant areas. And again, if you have specifics, the more specific you can be, the stronger your argument will be. And so hopefully this gives you an idea of how you can approach that essay. And of course, if you've got any questions once you've read through this assignment and you've watched this video, please feel free to either email me or to pop into the Zoom at 9 a.m. on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I would be happy to answer any questions you have.